When we took the luncheon, suspension, the father of the house had caught my eye, intending, I believe, to speak on the motion before the House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise, and I'll say it right off, I rise to support the minister and the government in getting this motion passed. However, Mr. Speaker, I think one and all know that I'm not a hypocrite. One and all know that I will speak my mind. And while I, right off the bat, say that I'm supporting the minister in his efforts to try to get this, bearing in mind that we can start today, but we've got a long way to go before you see anything done out there. And I begin by saying I am concerned about this referendum. Now, I think the House knows my positions about referendums. I go along because the majority says so, and it's a democracy. But I don't believe that everything we do, even if we term it national, that we have to go to put to a vote by the people and wait that kind of time on the people. The biggest concern is, suppose the people say no. Then what will the government do? If we are saying that things are so bad, and the minister gave some stark and troubling stats of loss of business to our people and what can happen, and they're not saying nothing new. We have said that. He said 25 years, I've been here 40. And it started way back then. And I'll come to a little bit of that, but I don't intend to be long. But I want to put some historical things in place because people tend to forget. And you hear that nobody did anything until now. What are they talking about? Where they come from anyhow? If we are saying that things are so bad, and we go to the vote, and the CPR or CPL or whatever they call themselves gets the upper hand, and the people say no, then what happened to all those people that are dying now? What happened to all those businesses that we know are hurting? So that is my huge concern about what we are doing here. And what I've said here is what I've said to the minister. I wasn't going for an outright vote. That was out of the question. 3 things. That was one. I was concerned, and I would support coming here, and if the people and the House says, yes, let's go for the vote, I would support it. But the other thing is, the other was 3 things for me, that we build in Georgetown, because that's where we are. How in the world do they get a dive spot in the middle of a dump where the ship is dumping, anchoring? Where in the world that happens? I don't support that. That's where it is.
Honorable member, I think you meant in the middle of a port.
I meant that the ships were dumping their anchor in the middle of the port.
Okay.
At times.
I know how the reporting goes in this place, you see, so I want to make sure you got it clear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You're paying very close attention. Thank you very much. It aggravates me when for generations we've been out there. And all this talk about you breaking up the coral and this, well, shouldn't be that. If that is so, man, I don't think that's anymore. That's not reality anymore out there. We do have some sensitive areas that we have to watch. And I leave that up to those people that are knowledgeable. I used to dive 60 feet. I can't dive 5 feet now. I float right back up. So I don't know nothing about down there now. Mr. Speaker, that's the place for it. Mr. Berkeley, and I well know, because we had that battle between 1972 and 76 to get that dock. And he was defeated, and they opened it in 1977 when he had lost. And they called him to speak, and he had his say. I was right there, and he could say. But from then, you had the naysayers, and you had those people that believed, well, this is where we've been coming for generations, so we are going to build a dock there. That was 72 to 76, and they built it, and it lasted. And if we don't build, we will lose the business that we have been losing. And if there anybody has to anchor, maybe, if coral reproduces itself, as they say, then what is being reproduced will get destroyed or continue to get destroyed unless they're going to stop every doggone thing and we have nothing at all. We are losing the business. Not new. We said that. And I can confess to anything. I have been, I still is in the forefront all the time, pushing, planning, begging for the understanding of opposition. And Mr. Speaker, you got somebody else coming behind me, but I know you remember the days that you all was against it too. Oh yes, you all beat me to pieces. But yeah, can I hear the answer for himself? But I remember about the dock argument. The third thing that I support with cruise tourism, it cannot be all here in Georgetown. I don't care what they say. And we're not going north side if you can only have a couple of hours. We're not going east end if you can only have a couple of hours. We know that we have to do something in Cayman Brac. We know that. But I have always maintained, and I'll say this again, spots is atrocious. It's not, they say it's not where ships want to go. I believe that. But sometimes some go. And for what we are supposed to be a first world country, to have that mess there, and I know when the tenders hit the reef up there too, at times. So we should be doing something to clean that place up, to make it a place in this modern Cayman that we are trying to build, where that be a place where they can go. You might be able to get more than one, but at least that one would be here and not pass us by. Then, Mr. Speaker, when we built the turtle farm, and all the industry came to us and supported us, because if you recall, I think it was Hurricane Mitchell or Michelle, whichever one it was, destroyed the turtle farm. And we decided that we had to move it away, and in deciding that, we decided to, everybody was crying, all we had was Stingray City. That's what we had as tourists. You had Hell, you had Stingray City, not much more. And they said, we need things for the tourists to do. They encouraged us to build the turtle farm. And in building the turtle farm, it was decided that we would put one pier there to get a ship. Oh, well, what did McKeever Bush try to do that for? They investigated me too for that. And we still took it on, but it never got built. Government is spending, I think, probably $7 or $8 million a year. And we have, what, a few hundred people employed there. Some people, I heard this, oh, shut it down or sell it. Why? Why? If it's 150, 200 Caymanian families that are benefiting, that's a couple of hundred people well. But the country benefits from it. Some of them people that operate the business are in the business. Or if you take it down Turtle Farm, it can take away business from us. Come on, where is your thinking? You think you can bring a shipload of people, all of them go to Turtle Farm? No. A good portion is going to go to the Turtle Farm, cut down less on government's grant each year. But plenty of those are still going to Stingray City. They're still coming up here to do business and shop and see the town. So they will still get their tours and their trips. And if they go in Pedro Castle, they will still get that. It's not going to stop them. What I've said here, you go into records of this house and you will find it. So those are my three things that I support. Well, I'm a supporter of the government. I'm not in cabinet. I do have a vote in caucus, and I make my position known. But from we said 25 years, I'm saying more. 1984 to 1988, you'll find in the records where it was mentioned the talk of getting some kind of new dock and proper cruise ship dock. Because then they was anchoring. 1988, I remember Mr. Linford Pearson, who was in charge of the port, talking about it, wanting it, putting plans forward. That was 1988 to 92. And oh, if you do that, you can have the waves up in the assembly. So that killed that. 1992 to 96, some talk. 96 to 2000, some talk. 2000, I became minister late that year, and 2001, although I had campaigned on it, and all those times I campaigned on getting proper cruise. I even talked about looking at the North Sound. Likely got my head chopped off. It's still on, so I survived. 2000, having campaigned, I began again the start of getting a pier and improved facilities. And the battle for cruise ships were back on. A battle, Mr. Speaker, because the hoteliers, not so much the taxi drivers who were campaigning against me and just took that as a natural part of the campaign and be against me or whatever team I was on. But the hoteliers in Cayman and the hotels in the Caribbean had put up a lobby against the cruise ships. They went so far because I was the voice here in Cayman to try to get me elected to the association twice. And I said, you think I fool? I don't want no name post. I need to be where I can hold big arguments. And so I refused. Well, both times, one right after the election and one right before the election, I said, But we had a real battle with them. It was people like the late Robert Hamilton and others, even to Mr. Brinard, being at Waltham. All those people, they were. And I speak of Robert Hamilton because he was a friend and an advisor and a big businessman here in Georgetown who understood the business and knew that people were making money from the business. Not just his business. Not just his business. He done a lot. And I say that here. 2 meetings to Miami with me. Other times, loaded us with information to go and talk to FCCA there. But we had that kind of knowledge. People that understood marketing, people that understood the business. But we had that battle to keep the crews coming. In 2000 to 2003, we got the Royal Bottler done. Had a battle there too, sabotage within. The old Caymanian jealousy kicked in. We don't need a pair. And what you heard was, they must be getting something out of it. But that's all they seem to have thought about. Somebody was getting something out of it. But the other part of it was political as well. And that old thing came back where Gerard said that if a Caymanian can be the captain, he going down in the riggings and wreck it. And that's where the politics came in. Felt if you got that project done, if McKeever got that project done, boy, now stop him. Let's kick it in the face. If Moses get that project done, PPM get that done, you can't stop them because you can have a little time to prove its value. And that is still going on today. Still going on. Done it? They done it with that road. They nearly killed me for that. And the first person that I saw on it, thumbs up, was one of the biggest ones with a placard against me about stopping it. That's what happened. Today, it's the best thing. Shetty Hospital was the best thing. Or the worst thing. Look at it today. Even to Royal Bottler, those are things that have served and are serving the country. The turtle farm is the same thing. People like to chat and talk and chat and talk, but don't know a damn thing about what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. They haven't been anywhere. They don't own any business. Now they got a chance. Now they have a boat. Now they have a car. Now they have a van. Maybe they'll understand what it takes to run a business. And when they come and talk about too many people, well, what is Georgetown could be then? If you only put it here in Georgetown, still be a load of people. But for how long? A day? Maybe you do that 4 or 5 days a week. It can't kill us to support the government in building this pier. It can't. But we got to put aside some things. And I didn't have to experience that uniqueness of the Damascus Road. As somebody said, I was there. I was there. And so, Mr. Speaker, without holding the House up, the last proposal that I had was the Chinese proposal, 2009-2012. And of course, the sabotage and the accusations from within took that away as well. They had a good plan. At a low cost, nothing was finalized because we had so much infighting, so much sabotage within the civil service and the elected politicians that I said, you know what? Let's see what they're going to do. Well, in you came, and they didn't do any better with you. They nearly killed you. I was the Speaker of this House, but I said this is meaningful to this country. And people like me, they have a little knowledge. Not that I know it all. Of course I don't. And I don't proclaim to. But I do know, as somebody said, I was there. I was there. And I know who was against. And we forgave them. Only thing that I can't really find it yet, I will though, because I don't hold any grudge, to know that we have to wait for so long to get it, and we don't know if we're going to get it. Is this a house in futility? I hope not, Mr. Speaker. I hope not. I am for it with those understandings, and I pray to God that we can win out, Because if we don't, where then is the democracy? What do we do then? If the naysayers wins, what happens? What do we do? Come back and say, oh, the people voted against it, so sorry, darling, but I can't help you. I'm elected to lead. And if I make a mistake, I made a mistake, it can be corrected, but I'm elected to lead. And leading means making a decision, even though there are people against it. That's, as far as I'm concerned, true leadership. I come here because the people put me here to make a decision on their behalf. And they gave me the privilege of saying, I'm voting my conscience. This is what I have to do. Sorry, I'm hoping and praying that our arguments and those arguments of the people who know and who understand, and now even more people are suffering because the economy is still buoyant, but not for those people, not for them. I know their heart. I know who's coming to me that has never come to me to help pay insurance or to help pay light bill or pay telephone bill. They have never. They could do it. They could do it because they were making money out of the cruise industry. But we sat down and listened to these people who either they themselves are making skillions of dollars out of it and don't want that to change, or they don't care about those people. And we have some of that, because we have some of these people who say they are environmentalists. But you ever see anything like this, Mr. Speaker? They're so big environmentalists, but they leave high ground and go over there up into a pumped-up garden to build a house. Reclaim land. But yet, they're the one telling us, no, you can't do this. And yet they're gone and build their big house on what I call this pumped-up land with big gates. Can't even see over the wall. But yet, you don't do nothing out there. That can destroy the country. And when Cayman, as far as I can understand, is probably still about 50% swamp. It was more than 50% swamp, this little island here. It was more than 50% swamp. And the hypocrites want to look in my face and tell me that I am against the environment because I say, let's get these amenities, let's get these facilities. Oh yeah? No, baby. We have come a long way, and we have yet plenty. I believe that our country stands still in a good position, and as the new leader of the opposition say, we have good opportunity, and we must take that opportunity by the hand and let's lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Does any other Honourable Leader of the Opposition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under your leadership, I had the opportunity to attend or join you in the negotiations of the changes in the advancement of our Constitution. I was speaking in a podcast recently, and I was saying that one of the highlights of that was the Wi-Fi. The name of the Wi-Fi where we sat was Churchill's War Room, because we sat in the vicinity of Churchill's War Room. My most recent trip to the UK, I had the opportunity to visit, not together, but separately, the Churchill's War Room Museum with the former leader of the opposition. And while I was there, I found this little book called The Wicked Wit of Winston Churchill. And I found in there, when asked what the qualities of a politician required, Mr. Churchill replied, the ability to foretell what is going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, and next year, and to have the ability afterwards to explain why it didn't happen. Well, the Minister for Tourism took away that opportunity for me to explain why it didn't happen. He did so very well in his presentation this morning. Mr. Speaker, as I did listen to the move of the motion, I was struck by how much the mover had changed. And I give him the respect and acknowledgement that he was willing enough to get up there, and it was a very brave move to express his change in opinion. And so now he's fully on board with having a cruise pier, and even supports having it located in Georgetown, which we were once accused of not having any vision why we were building a port in Georgetown. Yet, as he confessed today, he was one of those who fought against the cruise piers in Georgetown when he was in the opposition. He has also said in recent times that he now supports building a new cargo dock facility. His debate today sounded as if he dusted off the speaking notes from the PPM government when we were trying to get an upgraded cargo port and cruise berthing built. And Mr. Speaker, this was the cruise companies footing the bill, with repayments from the cruise passengers, not from the government coffers. That is what the minister and others on the government benches fought against, Mr. Speaker. But at least finally, their eyes seem to have opened. The minister says he's worried about the negative impact that the cruise decline is having on our people and on government revenues. As the minister also seemed to confess, Mr. Speaker, this referendum will not really settle the issue. Despite his glowing words today, Mr. Speaker, the minister's past actions, even in government, led me to believe that this referendum is not about settling the question of cruise berthing, but is instead, it's a smokescreen designed to deflect attention away from the government's failure to take any actions necessary to support Cayman's tourism industry and the livelihood of those who depend upon it. The government understands that it will face the electorate in a general election in 6 months or so. They know that they will be found wanting when held to account for their performance after 4 years in office. What can they say to the 500 or so Caymanians who have lost their jobs as cruise visitor numbers have slumped while the government did nothing? One thing they should do is beg for forgiveness. Maybe this is what the referendum is seeking to do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us recognize again that cruise visitor numbers are at their lowest level this century, and that there is no defined path or plan to recovery. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, this referendum is not it. This referendum proposal is indeed intended to signal to voters that the government is at least doing something worthwhile about cruise tourism. At the same time, it also signals the excuse that they will try to use for the significant failings. But the reality is that they should never have gotten us into this position, Mr. Speaker. With our tourism sector, especially the cruise tourism sector, on its knees, we are here because, Mr. Speaker, the government turned a deaf ear every time the opposition pointed to the unfolding crisis and urged them to act. Mr. Speaker, the one sensible thing the government has done since embarking on this course is to accept that the referendum should be held on election day. We welcome that change, if only because it will save the enormous cost of a vote on a separate day. Mr. Speaker, we are where we are today. I take note that the motion itself highlights the crisis in our cruise industry, detailing a significant decline in cruise arrivals and claiming the lowest arrival numbers in over 2 decades. The data supporting these claims are undeniable, and the deterioration in one of our critical economic pillars has been unfolding before our eyes for the past 2 years. The minister, in his speech earlier, confessed to this. The PPM opposition has consistently highlighted this issue, with each report from the Minister of Tourism showing declining numbers and no sign of meaningful progress. We had urged the PACT and now the UPM governments to act swiftly to safeguard this critical industry. But, Mr. Speaker, after years of delay, instead of presenting this House and the people with a concrete plan to address this crisis, the government has now opted to propose a referendum. All the glowing words today in favor of cruise tourism and the need for cruise pairs will not be solved with this motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I believe that referendums can be a valuable democratic tool. However, they are only effective when the people are presented with clear, developed alternatives to choose from. A referendum should be the culmination of a decision-making process where there are options on the table that are fully outlined and understood. This allows voters to make an informed choice based on the facts and the future direction they prefer for the country. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the referendum question proposed by the government fails in this regard. Instead of providing a well-developed plan that outlines the specifics of cruise berthing infrastructure, where it would be located, how it would impact the environment, the cost involved, and the long-term benefits, we are being asked to support a question that is, at best, vague, and at worst, incomplete. It is not enough to simply ask, should we develop cruise berthing infrastructure, without giving voters the detailed information that they need to weigh the pros and the cons. This leads to my first primary concern, Mr. Speaker. What is being presented today is far from that. There is no proposal on the table for the people to consider, no cost breakdown, no detailed environmental impact assessment, no feasibility studies outlining what this infrastructure would look like or where it would be built. Without these critical details, how can the public be expected to make an informed decision? Mr. Speaker, before the people can make a judgment on whether to support cruise berthing infrastructure, they need to answer two fundamental questions. Those questions, a few fundamental questions. Those questions include, but not limited to, Mr. Speaker, where would the infrastructure be built? Will it be in Georgetown Harbor, as the previous discussions have indicated? Or has the government identified a new potential site? What will be the environmental impact of the government's proposed solution? Will there be measures in place to mitigate damage to marine life, coral reefs, and our environment as a whole? What would be the projected cost of the cruise berthing project? And Mr. Speaker, who will foot the bill? Will it be the government, the private sector, or a public-private partnership? And how much of that cost will ultimately fall on Caymanian taxpayers? Mr. Speaker, will the redevelopment of the cargo port be a part of this project? Or will that be handled separately, which has been hinted? And what additional infrastructure will be necessary to support the cruise berthing facilities? Will we need expanded roads, more transportation options, or new visitor amenities? And let me say, Mr. Speaker, this is not standard rims on your car. What is the economic impact of proceeding or not proceeding with this project? How many jobs will be created? How many may be lost if we don't move forward? And what will the long-term benefits be for local businesses? Mr. Speaker, these are fundamental questions that any responsible government must answer before asking the people to vote on such a matter of national importance. Mr. Speaker, I know that the minister spoke to some of these questions during his journey to Damascus this morning. However, well-intended, they truly did not answer those questions. The public is being asked to weigh in on an issue without the facts they need to make a meaningful decision. This is not how a responsible government should act, especially when dealing with something as critical, or as a minister said, a national importance as the future of Cayman's cruise industry, a sector that supports thousands of jobs and generates significant revenue for our economy. Mr. Speaker, the recent economic impact assessment of cruise tourism by the Economics and Statistics Office, it was sent out to us this morning, attempts to provide some facts. However, Mr. Speaker, it only further explains the current dire situation with the cruise sector, but does not assess or address the future impact of building new piers. And Mr. Speaker, incredibly unhelpful were the minister's vague statements to the press on cruise berthing, when he stated, I quote, "Our view is simple, as cheap as it possibly can be, most environmentally friendly it can be, and we don't think you need two. The country can simply survive on one based on the ship amounts." Mr. Speaker, if the minister should publish all of the research supporting his views on the number of pairs needed and clarify what as cheap as possible means, including who will bear the costs. He would also explain how the balance between cheapest and most environmentally friendly will be achieved. For instance, he spoke this morning about traffic plans that were designed around the port which we presented. Mr. Speaker, those traffic plans cannot be created without extra space on the port, and the port can't move into Georgetown. To be able to have a true port where all the activities of the port happens on the port, it has to expand into the water. So, Mr. Speaker, the reality is there's no evidence behind the minister's sweeping claims. And Mr. Speaker, given his well-publicized statements, should voters consider his off-the-cuff remarks as being a solution when casting their ballots? What if a different proposal emerges later? What if a future government, after a yes vote, conducts research and determines something different than his comments? What if they find the need for additional spending on environmental mitigation, preventing the cheapest option? Making these comments without presenting a detailed, concrete proposal has potentially poisoned the public's ability to make an informed decision on what is being voted on. Then, by pushing for a referendum without offering clear details or supporting research, the government has muddled the waters, leaving voters to speculate on critical factors like cost, environmental impact, feasibility. The minister's words today may have added to that. And Mr. Speaker, this brings us to a second point. A yes vote will not settle the issue. If the government believes a yes vote will allow this or any government to proceed smoothly with building cruise berths, they are mistaken. Any government project involving cruise berths will be contested if it doesn't align with what the people believed they were voting for. Could a future government implement a two-pair solution after the ministry publicly stated that there would only be one? His public statements may already have constrained what's possible. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, this referendum will not resolve the issue, and a referendum that fails to settle matters is largely pointless. Lack of clarity undermines the referendum process, creating confusion and uncertainty rather than providing real solutions to the challenges facing Cayman's tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, this leads me to my third point. The government is shirking in its responsibility. Instead of developing a comprehensive plan to address the cruise industry decline, the government is shifting the burden of decision-making onto the public without doing the necessary groundwork. This referendum, as it stands, will do nothing to solve the crisis we are facing. It will not provide employment for the people standing out there this morning. If anything, it only serves to delay the government's responsibility to act, Mr. Speaker. Let us consider the logic the government is using. They claim that cruise berthing is a matter of national importance, yet they offer no clear position on the matter. The government is asking the public to vote on a question while remaining neutral on the outcome themselves. How can we expect the people to take this issue seriously when the government does not seem to have a firm stance? If the issue is of such national importance, the government should lead with a clear plan and not pass a buck to the public. Mr. Speaker, people need to know. Has a member from West Bay North changed his mind, who stood on his platform of Brexit, port exit, and walked the floor? Mr. Speaker, we know the Minister of Tourism has, in his words, back then, when he said, if the people want it, he will eat his words, and he will have his shovel ready to dig the first hole. And he has today stood bravely and, in so many words, eaten his words. Pardon the pun, Mr. Speaker. But the public needs to know, where does the government in its entirety stand on this project? So, Mr. Speaker, referendums are not a quick fix. As the UK's Independent Commission on Referendums had pointed out, a referendum should be part of a wider decision-making process, not a substitute for it. The government's approach is to use a referendum as a way to avoid making tough decisions and doing the hard work of governance. However, a referendum should only come once there is a fully developed proposal that the public can evaluate and either support or reject. By proposing a referendum before any substantial work has been done to create a plan, the government is essentially asking the people to make a decision in the dark. This is not just irresponsible, Mr. Speaker, but it is a disservice to the people of the Cayman Islands. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we all know this referendum will not solve the crisis facing our cruise and stay-over tourism sectors. Even if the people were to vote in favor of cruise berthing infrastructure, we would still be no closer to knowing what the infrastructure would look like, how it would be funded, or what the long-term impacts would be. The referendum as proposed only postpones the urgent action that is needed. Despite the many concerns that we have expressed here today, the PPM opposition will not vote against the motion. Simply put, no other political group has supported the cruise sector more than the People's Progressive Movement. Despite the current slump, there are still hundreds and hundreds of Caymanians who earn a good living from cruise tourism. The future of those businesses, workers, and their families depend on finding a solution to the challenges that I have outlined. We have long been the champions for a thriving cruise and stay-over tourism sector across the Cayman Islands, and the PPM will not now abandon the thousands of Caymanians whose livelihoods depend on tourism. So, Mr. Speaker, despite our concerns, we will nonetheless vote for the motion to show our solidarity with the many good Caymanians who serve as ambassadors to our islands in the cruise sector. We expect that the government will pass a motion and bring back a bill to this Parliament to set up the necessary arrangements to enable the proposed referendum. Mr. Speaker, when it comes, we will evaluate the bill on its merits. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may God bless us all.
Thank you, Honourable Leader. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If no other member wishes to speak, I will invite the Honourable Minister to exercise his right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I gotta say that I am a little disappointed in what I heard by the new leader of opposition. But I can't say that I'm surprised by his approach. Interestingly enough, before the debate started, he said to me, Kenneth, don't worry, we cool, but you know, it's my first speech as leader of opposition, so I gotta be strong. Fair enough. Prepared for what can be seen in the world of politics as the political licks. Mr. Speaker, I'm okay with that, because I consider myself a leader. I consider myself a representative. I don't like the word politician. And sadly, the leader of opposition didn't start off his reign as the new leader of parliament in a good way. Because in my humble opinion, Mr. Speaker, he has fallen for the trap of politics. Mr. Speaker, it took a lot for me as a representative to come to this honorable House knowing my political stance, to convince my colleagues that after 3.5 years working on their behalf, to come to them and say, colleagues, I've looked at the numbers, I've sat with these executives over and over and again. I've done everything I possibly can to beg these people, the cruise lines to come, and nothing is changing. It is time, and allow me to say this, Mr. Speaker. He keeps on talking about the members. Not all the members to blame. If you want to blame anybody, blame me. Mr. Bush was on the other side. I guess it's only me you can blame. The Honorable, yeah, I hear him throw slabs at you, but I'll take the licks for it. It's okay. I've done everything I possibly can to convince them, and I've come back to my colleagues and say, colleagues, it's probably not very attractive. Everybody knows the 25% of the voter population was signed to have a referendum. And it's perceived that 25% of that would be against the pair, which many of them would be wrong in that perception, because even when I supported the signatures, it was on the basis of the people should have their say. But we're going to get to what my position was shortly, Mr. New Leader. Mr. Speaker, I don't even know how to go about the last part of the member's contribution. He practically convinced the country to vote against the referendum. You've given every argument in this honorable House, regardless of what is perceived as hypocrisy by myself in the last administration, but rather than taking it as a goodwill to say, thank God this side is recognizing what you have said was the right thing. You decided to dive yourself into politics, and now you have confused the people about what they should do in the referendum. You have given all the reasons why they shouldn't vote in favor of the referendum. And then you're going to get up and say, but Mr. Speaker, I'm going to support the referendum.
Honorable Minister, as you take a break, I'd be grateful if you would direct your speech at the chair. So when you're speaking about the Honorable Leader, you say the Honorable Leader, not you. There's a reason for that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will do. Mr. Speaker, the member said a yes vote will not help the issue. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Leader said a referendum is pointless. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Leader of Opposition also said, I referred to, I think it's a book by Churchill, if I am not incorrect, talking about leaders taking a decision on things, and there's truth to that. But I wonder if he have forgotten that the number one document that leads this country was done by way of referendum, called the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, maybe it's because I'm a new generation leader that believes that the people can make the right decision when presented with facts, and leaders that can persuade with truth and evidence and trust. Because, Mr. Speaker, the new leader of opposition and the former Minister of Tourism will recall my conversations with them about where they failed in the last attempt. And my mother always used to say to me, it's not what you say, but how you say it. And Mr. Speaker, you would recall my contribution in this honorable House when I spoke. And I was quite annoyed by the fact that the contributions talked about rascals. And these are the people who were a part of the CPR group then. But though me and they may not share the same opinion today, they are my people. They are voters in this country. They pay taxes like everybody else. Democracy means the way of the majority. What strong leaders do is present the evidence and is persuasive enough to convince the masses. And that's what your administration was unable to do. So don't be upset today by highlighting and then derailing the process by giving them more reasons to say no. The government can get a directive from the people. You might get lucky if you win the government. That at the very least you can
Honorable Minister, I've directed you not to address the Honorable Leader directly. We're trying to avoid this becoming too personal. Say what you wish to say about him or what he said within the parameters of what's allowed in parliamentary process, but direct all of them at me. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, I kind of lost my frame of thought there, but I'll try to catch it back. I do apologize. I agree with you. And for those who are listening, the parliamentary proceedings or processes are there for a reason. And though we get hot in our debates, it's essential so that we can keep the appropriate approach to our deliberations. Mr. Speaker, I was suggesting that it would still be good to get a directive from the people. Of course, the member is correct in suggesting that there's no quick fix. I agree. But, Mr. Speaker, I think most people don't like the approach of dictatorship type of politics. I know some people have different views. I don't. I believe in my people. I believe that when things get sensitive, when you can't be sure, it's okay when it's a 90-10 or an 80-20 on a decision. But the truth is, nobody could find a clear position on how the country as a mass felt about this matter. And the member from my side, the godfather of the House, is right. We're going to still be in a pickle if the people say no. But isn't that what democracy is, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker? They have a saying, I want to try to remember the saying, but I'm going to give a summary of what it is that democracy is a terrible political system, but it's the best of those that we have. I think it's summarized to something like that.
The quote is actually one of Churchill's, and it goes this way: democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know with your wisdom and historical memory, you would have helped me with that. So, Mr. Speaker, I must say that I'm disappointed with the way the new leader have approached his contribution, because it was about getting back at those who were in the way before. He said, Mr. Speaker, they should ask for forgiveness. Well, here it is. Forgive me, please. Can we get the politics over the way? Sorry. Mr. Speaker, through you, can you ask the member to take my forgiveness? And now let's talk about getting this referendum approved by the way of the people so the next administration can fix the problem. Because we're 6 months away from an election. Now, unless the member was suggesting, and interestingly enough, he said this, Mr. Speaker. He said, we told them forgive me, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to find it here in a second. He said that we told them that there's something that needed to be done to fix the cruise industry. But interestingly enough, and I remember even noting it with my team, I said, they're going to say everything about cruise, but they will never utter the words bill of port. So you're going to say, the government could say, or the opposition, let me rephrase that. The opposition can say all they want. But they themselves too was afraid of those who opposed it. Because, Mr. Speaker, in all due respect, the last administration lost the administration primarily on that one issue. That's why nobody didn't want to talk about the peers. Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you how far I've decided to go with this issue and what it took to convince my colleagues. And my colleagues, in supporting myself on this position, is taking what you call a political risk. Another added major issue right before, 6 months before the election. You know what we could have done? Not say anything about it at all. Next year, we're going to have a little bit peaker number. I could have come in here in January and say, oh, the projections are looking good, and played the political game. Mr. Speaker, it took a level of commitment to this country about the truth. And yes, to admit that there was truth in what was said before. And rather than playing politics with it, now confusing, the part that annoys me the most is that there's going to be people who are listening to the opposition, who are going to now, based on that contribution, go, am I voting for it or am I not voting for it? What was the guidance? Did the leader of opposition say to convince the people who follow them whether they're going to vote for or against the motion? But they asked us for definitive. At least we said we support the building of a pier. And we're taking a supportive stand, but we'll respect the people's will. This, again, Mr. Speaker, we fall for the trap of politics all the time. Couldn't just take a political win to say they ate their words. Mr. Speaker, the member from opposition, the leader, have accused me of opposing the last administration, but refused to tell the people all the facts. Mr. Speaker, the way I generalized in my comments to say, maybe we only need one port downtown, was because of my position previously about cargo. And it's still the same today. And the member knows that. Because the project that was proposed the last time, and I remember going through this debate the last time, you want the meme that you were talking about? Mr. Speaker, he accused me about making a meme, right? About the cargo with the trucks going like this. That's why I opposed your project. Because I accused the administration of no forward thinking from a cargo perspective. At no point in the Hansards of this House you'll see that I say I was against the pier. I am the representative for Georgetown Central, and it's the Georgetown Central people that live with the trucks riding through their neighborhoods every night. It's the Georgetown Central people's properties that cannot have any nightlife anymore because of the cargo. And I encouraged you at that time in the last administration, have you considered the cargo component to move it in a way? Matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, in the Hansards will show where I quoted you as the then premier on a radio show saying we have not considered cargo at all, and that you said you heard some comments by the then leader of the CPR, Mr. Moxham, showing out some ideas about it being somewhere, but you have no idea about that, and you're not considering it. And I brought it up on the floor of this House saying, as the representative of the people's voice for Georgetown Central.
Honorable Minister, I really hate to break your flow, but you're quoting or purporting to quote me. The cargo, just let me say for the record, a cargo port, a renovated and expanded cargo port, was part of the overall port project. So I could never have said we haven't considered cargo. Somehow you have misheard and now have misquoted me. I don't want to get into the fray, so please leave me out of it as far as you can.
I'm going to do my best, and also to say, sir, that you didn't say about cargo itself, but that cargo project that was being circulated, not specifically the cargo project here. I'll happily read it for you, Mr. Speaker. If you crave my indulgence, Mr. Speaker, I'll be happy to bring it up.
Please, let's clear this up.
Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, the 29th of October, 2019, in my contribution, I said, Mr. Speaker, let me move on to the other, probably most important concern with the government's proposed project. That is the cargo element. In the government's current plans, they say they're going to be getting an upgrade to the cargo portion of the dock facilities, somewhere in the region of $20 million, Mr. Speaker. And in the interest of time, because I don't want to be here reading up the whole matter of my contribution then, I want to find the part where I was quoting you, Mr. Speaker, at that time as the premier, and what you said. Oh, here we go. Another quote, and this is quoting from the Hansard now, Mr. Speaker. I know I have heard it from other people around, and I have seen some plans who have talked about putting the cargo in the sound, there in breakers that would breach of the reef and come across the road and lean into the lakes created by the results of the quarries. I've seen those documents. I've heard those discussions about it, but none of them is in the government's initiative, nor does it have the government's endorsement. As I said, it is a big enough challenge for us to get through the enhancement of the cargo port and building the cruise port in the area that has already been recognized as our natural harbor for the Cayman Islands for as long as we've been settled in Georgetown. And the last line, quoting again, so we are certainly not about to try to put it anywhere else.
Thank you for that. That's perfectly fine. That's exactly what I said.
Okay. So my point was, Mr. Speaker, is that at that time, my opposition to the government's position was there was no knowledge or no intention to think about the people of Georgetown and the businesses in the Georgetown area, and also thinking about the growth of our country to think about moving it. And the former minister would remember our phone calls. Wouldn't you remember, Mr. Moses? Well, at least you didn't disagree. Mr. Speaker, the member from West Bay, the godfather of the House, the member for Georgetown, West Bay, father of the House, not a godfather. That's a different show now. I tell you what, if you ask a couple of people, they would say he's the godfather. The father of the House. Mr. Speaker, I think there's a tremendous difference between our approaches to governance. One, I respect his way, and I think we just have different approaches. He believes that if you see something need to be done for the people, regardless if there is a 50-50 split, you do it. That's one way to look at it. I think we can get it done by persuading the people. I be honest with you, Mr. Speaker, I think even the public can feel the shift in attitude and the recognition that we can do this in the right way. And that the people don't feel that they're losing everything. To be honest with you, Mr. Speaker, there's a port out there right now, and it got there somehow, and I can bet that my great-grandfather probably caught a couple of squabs right out there before the current cargo facility and current pier facility was done. We recognize there's going to be sacrifices. There's a dock in Cayman. As a young boy, I used to swim underneath the dock because it was on pylons. And there's marine life underneath that thing because I caught the biggest snappers in the world off of it, stealing on the dock when the security guard wasn't looking to fish off of it. So, Mr. Speaker, we have examples across the world where human engineering can merge with the environment and create a new environment that was probably even better than it was before. Mr. Speaker, there's a movie with Will Smith. It's where he was the last man standing. I think it was in New York. The name of the movie. I Am Legend. Thank you, good member. And Mr. Speaker, for those who may have watched that movie, the reason I'm bringing it up is because, you see, nature has a funny way of taking back what is theirs. So when the environmental effects happen for the installation of a cruise pier, coral, marine life, all of those things will happen. Sometimes I was having a conversation just the other day with somebody talking about sediments. Thank you so much, Honorable Leader. And I think about when we have a nor'wester and you look out to the waterfront, it's creamy and sediment is washed up and the colors of wash from the ground, but the coral don't die then. By all means, I know environmentalists, so I don't want to assume, because dredging is a totally different thing. But there could be ways that this can be done without those environmental impacts. So while I know that the people are listening and still do have their concerns. And even though the leader of opposition has confused them now more than ever, hopefully he will get up publicly at one point after supporting the referendum to convince the people out there what they should do. Because I'm assuming he's not suggesting that they should vote against the referendum. But I'm quite sure the media who's listening will eventually ask him for comment on that, because he wasn't very clear, Mr. Speaker. Because we're going to, since we're going to play a little bit of game of politics, maybe he should make that clear for the public, considering the fact he's the new leader moving forward. And I'm happy about that, you know. I don't want anybody to think I'm against that. Mr. Speaker, I'm just looking for my last things. I want to make sure that I've gotten all of them out before I close this debate. Oh, he spoke about cheapness. And for further clarity, Mr. Speaker, I mean, as I said in my contribution, the cheapest one possible to the standard that is necessary for them to be safe. That's it. I didn't mean, I know he tried to infer that I'm talking about when you just throw it in and break down. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that many people in this country worry about government overspending unnecessarily. That's what I mean. I was trying to give comfort to the public to know that we are going to do no more than what we need. Because people have concerns about cost. The truth is, what we're here to talk about is the ability for them to get on and off. That's it. On and off the ship. That's all. That's the one thing that's stopping them from coming. So we don't need that more than that. And why I said one is because, rightfully so, as the member for West Bay West said, maybe we should consider one somewhere else. Spread the love around the Cayman Islands. The good member said must. But also, Mr. Speaker, the other thinking behind potentially one, and that's for the next government to decide, right, is that when you think about 2 mega ships, that's 4 ships to the equal standard of what we have out there now. And that's a good lot. That's a good, if we had 2 mega ships per day, every day of the week, for 365 days, nobody in the business would cry. Because that's a good day. You have good days when you have a lot of them, and then you have bad days. But 2 mega ships at the rates and the numbers they are now is a good standard. It doesn't overwhelm the traffic too much. It's enough business for everybody to get a little piece. That's why I said 1. And it's also cheaper than 2. And it doesn't include the cargo. Mr. Speaker, just because it's related to the topic and we've all talked about cargo, the public may be aware that the government went through, or still going through the process of public consultation about the future of our cargo facilities and what the government will have to consider. We haven't finished the report because the report hasn't come back to me as minister yet for us to accept the report. As a matter of fact, once the report comes, we will not be making a decision because it's too close to the election in respect to that. It's in that area of time of sensitivity. So we'll get the report late before this Honorable House in respect to what it suggests. But what we're trying to do, Mr. Speaker, and this is the part that the leader of opposition should be mindful of. Though we may not be able to get the answers to those, that doesn't mean we do nothing. That report can at the very least be the starting baton in a relay race to say, here you go. We've done a lot of the work. We've spent a lot of money on it. Here's what the professionals have suggested. In the event that you are the next government, or even those who are on the outside looking in who wants to come in, or even if it's us that comes back, you'll have something to work from. You, Mr. Speaker, being a former leader of this country, you know it takes more than one term to do things. I remember you telling me that, personally. And the reality is hitting me now today. So, but that doesn't mean we don't do anything. Maybe we should consider longer terms in Parliament like what they do in the UK to 5 years. But God, if I bring that up, they'll say I'm looking more years, so I'm not going to bring that up. But my point is, some administration has to be able to work with the next administration to do some parts of the work. So this referendum, in our minds, Mr. Speaker, is at the very least giving the next administration, after the day of election, they will know who the government is and also the will of the people. And what more can you ask for? Then you can go off with a mandate, which I'm hoping that the answer will be a resounding yes. Then you can have the comfort to say the people has given us the mandate, not by our political one in our book, but the people's will, and you can move forward. I don't have no problem taking on a project that I presented the last time, brushing it off, take a little bit of that cargo off of it, and move forward with your project, you know. I had no problem with that. I had no shame to come here and say, yeah, I took your idea, but the people benefiting. Ain't nothing with that. I don't know why people hold on to those feelings for. I'm here to represent the people. But my point is, Mr. Speaker, before you do all of that stuff, suppose we had went off in this administration and said, you know what, we didn't like the PPM one. We started our own project. We spent a couple million on the report, a different design, a different location, and the people come back and still say, who told you we wanted a cruise? Suppose the public wants to move away from cruise. Mr. Speaker, because I know those who are against the pier is listening, I want to say to them that I too respect your view very much. But everybody's view has to be respected. The last time we played games about the referendum, and probably would have been a better place today if we actually had that referendum then. We wouldn't have the evidence that we have today with the numbers being so low. But God don't make mistakes. He don't make mistakes. And maybe he did not want the referendum to happen then until we are here today to actually feel the truth. Maybe it wasn't clear. And I'll add one more component to it, Mr. Speaker. Leaders have to be trusted in order for you to say, I'm going to do something even without your input. You know why people call for referendums more and more every day across the world? Because they don't trust their elected arm anymore. They would rather say, you let me choose, me and my peers, and if we get it wrong, we'll deal with it. Because we've lost the faith of the people. Mr. Speaker, I trust my people. I trust that the evidence will be presented between now and the general election. I trust that the people whose lives will be affected will sit and have mature conversations with those who also have concerns about the environment to say, listen, this is what will happen to me and my family and my Susan or my David that I feed when I go home. Because I don't think the CPR group want people to lose their jobs. But I also believe that the people who want to keep their jobs don't want to necessarily damage the environment unnecessarily. We all want the same thing, and we can get there. We just need to talk about it. And I believe this administration will deliver the dialogue necessary for us to come out of that referendum with a positive resolution. Knock it down today. That's what's going to happen, Mr. Speaker, because we're being transparent and we're being honest. We're not going to play the political games with it. So I encourage the opposition to clarify to the public that you are in support of the referendum because you've made it clear as mud. With that being said, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank those who were in the audience today to come and support the need for this very important referendum. And thank you for your commitment to standing for what you believe in. And I thank those who are on the opposite side of this for standing what you believe in. That's democracy. And whenever we stop doing that, that's when we've lost our society. Let's just do it in a mature way. With that being said, Mr. Speaker, I thank you and I ask all members to vote in the affirmative for the motion before us.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The question is, Whereas the government intends to hold a referendum on the cruise berthing infrastructure on the day of the 2025 general elections, be it now therefore resolved that the following question be declared to be a matter of national importance. Quote, should the Cayman Islands develop cruise berthing infrastructure? Unquote. And be it now further resolved that the question be specified in a bill and brought by the government to the Parliament for debate in accordance with the provisions of Section 69 of the Cayman Islands Constitution Order 2009. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
Mr. Speaker, can I call
I
for-
believe, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I believe the ayes have it. Minister, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I call for a division, please?
I didn't hear a no, but on this important matter, why not? Madam Clerk, would you please poll the members?
Honorable Juliana O'Connor Connolly.
Aye.
Honorable Andre Ebanks.
Aye.
Honorable Kenneth Bryan.
Aye.
Honorable Sabrina Turner.
Aye.
Honorable Johanna Ebanks.
Aye.
Honorable Isaac Rankin.
Aye.
Honorable Catherine Ebanks Wilkes.
Aye.
Honorable Heather Bodden.
Aye.
Mr. Bernie Bush.
Aye.
Honorable Dwayne Seymour. Absent. Honorable Makiva Bush.
Aye. Reluctantly, but anyway.
Honorable Joseph Hugh.
Aye.
Honorable Barbara Connolly.
Aye.
Honorable Wayne Panton. Absent. Mr. Moses Kirkconnell.
Aye.
Mr. Roy McTaggart.
Aye.
Mr. David White.
Aye.
Mr. Christopher Saunders.
Aye.
Sixteen ayes, 2 abstentions, no noes. I declare government motion number 1 of 2024. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Let me do that again. I used the word abstentions. It wasn't abstentions, it was abstentions. 16 ayes, 2 absentees, no noes. I declare government motion number 1 of 2024-2025 entitled Referendum on Cruise Berthing Infrastructure duly passed. Madam Clerk.
Government motion number 2 of 2024-2025. The Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision, the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian, Order 2024, to be moved by the Honorable Minister of Border Control, Labor and Culture.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Border Control, Labor and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Honorable Minister, is there a problem? You need a moment?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Speaker,
No rush.
it's just a matter of. Mr. Chair, sorry, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I beg to lay on the table of this honorable Parliament an order entitled the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian. Order 2024 for Mrs. Donna Danielle Morris.
Minister, we'll take a very short suspension until you've sorted out those logistical issues. The House is accordingly suspended for 5 minutes. Please, members, don't leave your seats.
Yeah.
We will resume proceedings. Honorable Minister, I think for the sake of,
Yeah.
of the record and everything, let's start again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay on the table of this honorable Parliament an order entitled the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Honorable Minister, I do believe that the motion which you are about to move is in relation to this order.
Yes, yes.
Please proceed.
Before I read the motion, Mr. Speaker, Section 26(1)(e) of the Immigration Transition Law 2022 revision empowers the Cabinet to grant the right of the Caymanian up to 4 persons in any calendar year who are recommended for such grant by the Caymanian Status and Permanent Residency Board. Any grant made by the Cabinet is, however, subject to ratification by the Legislative Assembly or Parliament. Ms. Donna Danielle Morris, Mr. Speaker, in June 2023, an application was made to the Cabinet with the support of the Caymanian Status and Permanent Residency Board for the right to be Caymanian of Ms. Morris. Cabinet thereafter approved the recommendation for Ms. Morris to be granted the right to be Caymanian and requested that the decision be sent to the Parliament of the Cayman Islands for ratification. Mr. Speaker, I now will set out why the Caymanian Status and Permanent Residency Board and Cabinet were convinced that Ms. Morris deserves the highest.
Honorable Minister, I do believe that you should move the motion.
Yeah, no.
And then what you're saying now, you say in your presentation on the motion. Because the motion is asking this Parliament to ratify those decisions.
Yeah.
So rather than repeating it,
Okay.
okay?
You can tell we don't do these often. Mr. Speaker, whereas Section Government Motion Number 2 of 2024-25, the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision, Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Order 2024, whereas Section 26(1)(e) of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision provides that the Cabinet, acting upon the recommendation of the Cayman Status and Permanent Residency Board, may grant the right to be Caymanian in accordance with the section, and whereas at their meeting on the 8th of August 2024, Cabinet granted Mrs. Donna Danielle Morris the right to be Caymanian pursuant to Section 26(1)(e). And whereas Section 26(1)(e) provides that such grant shall be ratified by the Cayman Islands Parliament. And whereas the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Order 2024 was laid on the table of the Parliament. Be it therefore resolved that the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Order 2024 be ratified by the Parliament pursuant to the provisions of Section 26(1)(e) of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision.
The motion has been duly moved. Does the Minister wish to speak thereto?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Donna Danielle Morris is a 55-year-old American national who initially came to the islands as a child in the late 70s. After her mother met and married Mr. Jack Burt Muhammad Ebanks of West Bay in New York, Ms. Morris completed her education through secondary school in Grand Cayman, having attended and graduated from the Cayman Islands Middle School and the Cayman Islands High School in the class of 1985. Thereafter, Ms. Morris returned to New York to continue her education but visited Cayman during all of her school breaks and summer vacations. Mr. Speaker, during her years living in New York, Ms. Morris attended school, lived with her grandmother, got married, had a son, Dimitri. She, however, remained steadfast in her determination to visit her family living in the Cayman Islands, and in 1992, Ms. Morris returned to Grand Cayman, where she remained and worked until 1999, when her sister graduated from high school. Subsequent to this, she decided to move to Atlanta, Georgia with her son and sister, who enrolled in university. During the 10 years that followed, Ms. Morris remarried and had a daughter, Destiny. Mr. Speaker, in 1998, Ms. Morris' mother, Mrs. Ebanks, applied for and was granted Caymanian status. However, due to Ms. Morris' age at the time that her late mother, Mrs. Ebanks, obtained Caymanian status, she was unable to pass this benefit on to her adult daughter. Mr. Speaker, Ms. Morris returned to Grand Cayman in 2009 with her daughter and remained here until 2013, but had to return to the United States due to difficulties securing employment. However, in 2017, Ms. Morris once again returned to Grand Cayman with her daughter, who at the time was 16, to assist with care of her ailing mother. Her mother, unfortunately, passed away in 2018. Mr. Speaker, Ms. Morris is currently employed as an executive officer in the Department of Education, and her adult son, Dimitri, a graduate of CCC, and a daughter, Destiny, a graduate of First Baptist Christian School, currently live with her. Ms. Morris has demonstrated a Christian spirit of volunteerism as a Rotarian and as a member of her church, and will seek to continue to stay active in her community through these two organizations. Mr. Speaker, for the reason outlined above, and in part because Ms. Morris has provided a series of noteworthy Caymanian references in support of her application, namely Mr. Kenneth Jefferson, JP, Mrs. Alicia E. Dixon, MBE, and Ms. Deborah Webb Sibley's. In March 2024, the Caymanian Status and Permanent Residency Board recommended Ms. Morris as a suitable candidate to be considered for the grant of the right to be Caymanian under Section 26(1)(e) of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision. Mr. Speaker, while Section 37 of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision provides for an applicant to apply for permanent residency after they are legal and ordinary resident in the Cayman Islands for 8 years, making Ms. Morris eligible to apply for permanent residency in 2025. Cabinet felt that her familial connectivity to the islands warranted the special consideration provided for under this facility. There is no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that Ms. Morris is deserving of consideration of being granted the right to be Caymanian in accordance with the provisions of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If no other member wishes to speak, I will invite the Honorable Minister. I will invite the Honorable Minister to wind up the debate on this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank all members of the Parliament for their tacit support. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The question is, and whereas the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Order 2024 was laid on the table of the Parliament, be it therefore resolved that the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Order 2024 be ratified by the Parliament pursuant to the provisions of Section 26(1)(e) of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, Government Motion Number 2 of 2024-2025, entitled the Immigration Transition Act 2022 Revision, the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Order 2024, is duly passed. Madam Clerk.
Government Motion Number 3 of 2024-2025, the Immigration Transition Act 2022 Revision, the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 2 Order 2024, to be moved by the Honorable Minister of Border Control, Labor and Culture.
Madam Clerk, I believe, as was the case earlier, before the motion can be moved, the order needs to be laid. I'll invite the Minister to do so now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable Parliament an order entitled Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 2, Order 2024, for Mrs. Hortensia Laudelina Fernandez.
So ordered. Sergeant. Minister, you may proceed to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Government Motion Number 3 of 2024-2025, the Immigration Transition Act 2022 Revision, Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 2 Order 2024. And whereas Section 26(1)(e) of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 Revision provides that Cabinet, upon the recommendation of the Cayman Status and Permanent Residency Board, may grant the right to be Caymanian in accordance with the section. And whereas at their meeting on 3rd September 2024, Cabinet granted Ms. Hortensia Laudelina Fernandez the right to be Caymanian pursuant to Section 26(1)(e). And whereas Section 26(1)(e) provides that such grant shall be ratified by the Cayman Islands Parliament. And whereas the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 2 Order 2024 was laid on the table of the Parliament. Be it therefore resolved that the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 2 Order 2024 be ratified by the Parliament pursuant to the provisions of Section 26(1)(e) of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 Revision.
The motion has been duly moved. Does the Honourable Minister wish to speak thereto?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do. Mr. Speaker, Hortensia Laudelina Fernandez is a 66-year-old Cuban national who was born in Cuba in 1958 to a Cuban father and a Caymanian mother, Miss Elva Lloyd Nee Ebanks. After fleeing Cuba in 1959, Miss Fernandez and Miss Lloyd were separated from Miss Fernandez's father and ended up living in Tampa, where Miss Fernandez attended Hillsborough County High School. Mr. Speaker, Miss Fernandez and Miss Lloyd returned to Cayman sometime in the early 1980s, and unfortunately, Miss Lloyd passed away in 2016 without having ensured that Miss Fernandez's immigration status was regularized. Mr. Speaker, it is unclear what identification documents were utilized in order for Ms. Fernandez to enter the Cayman Islands in the early 1980s, But upon Ms. Lloyd's passing, the family realized that because Ms. Fernandez was undocumented, it would prove problematic to prove that Ms. Fernandez was the daughter of Ms. Lloyd in order to regularize Ms. Fernandez's immigration status. However, in December 2023, a DNA test was conducted which confirmed that 99.999 certainty that Ms. Fernandez is the daughter of Ms. Lloyd, proving Ms. Fernandez's Caymanian connection by descent. Mr. Speaker, for the reason outlined above, and in part because Ms. Fernandez has provided a series of noteworthy Cayman references, namely Mrs. Julia Hunter, Mrs. Arika A. Farley, and Mrs. Daphne L. Orrick. In June 2024, the Cayman Status and Permanent Residency Board recommended Ms. Fernandez as a suitable candidate to be considered for the grant of the right to be Caymanian under Section 26(1)(e) of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision. Mr. Speaker, while Section 28(2) of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision provides an applicant to apply to the Cayman Status and Permanent Residency Board for the grant of the right to be Caymanian by descent, Cabinet felt it prudent to rectify Ms. Fernandez's immigration status as soon as possible. Once again, Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that Ms. Fernandez is deserving of consideration of being granted the right to be Caymanian in accordance with the provisions of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Before I invite other members to speak, Madam Premier, may I prevail on you to move standing order for the suspension of standing order 10.2 in order that the business of the House may continue beyond the hour of interruption.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I move the suspension of standing order 10.2 to allow the business of the House to continue beyond our 4:30 p.m.
Thank you. The question is that standing order 10.2 be suspended in order that the business of the House may continue beyond the hour of 4:30. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, standing order 10.2 is duly suspended. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, then I'll invite the Honorable Minister to exercise his right of reply or non-reply, whatever it is, since no one else spoke.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank all members of the Honorable Parliament for their unanimous support. God bless you all.
The question is, and whereas the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian number 2 Order 2024 was laid on the table of the Parliament, be it therefore resolved that the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian number 2 Order 2024 be ratified by the Parliament pursuant to the provisions of Section 26(1)(e) of the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, Government Motion Number 3 of 2024-2025, the Immigration Transition Act 2022 revision, the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 2 Order 2024 is duly passed. Madam Clerk.
Government Motion Number 4 of 2024-2025. Amendment to the Development Plan 1997, Proposed Rezoning, Lower Valley, Block 32D, Parcels 320 to 322, 339 to 341, and 355, and Block 38E, parcels 637 to 638, to be moved by the Honorable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing, Infrastructure, Transport, and Development.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move government motion number 4, 2024-2025, the amendment to the Development Plan 1997, proposing of rezoning Lower Valley Block 32D, parcel 320, 322, 339, 2, 341, and 355, and Block 38E, parcel 637 and 638. Whereas on the 13th of September 2023, a reference with CPA 2123, item 33 of the Central Planning Authority, CPA originally considered the request to amend development plans from agriculture residential to medium density residential over Block 32D, parcel 320, 322, 339 to 341, and 355. And Block 38E, parcel 637 and 638. It was resolved to adjourn the application and invite the application to address the authority regarding the potential adverse effects of the proposal. And whereas on the 8th of November 2024, reference to CPA 2623, item 31, the Central Planning Authority considered the request again, and it was resolved to forward the proposal for a 60-day public notification consultation period pursuing Section 11.2 of the Development and Planning Act 2021 revision. And whereas the proposed amendment were duly advertised in the Caymanian Times newspaper on the 13th, the 15th, the 20th, the 22nd of December 2023, in accordance with Section 11.2 of the Development and Planning Act 21 revision, with public consultation closing on February the 20th of 24. And whereas persons were invited to view the application and the Department of Planning for comments, and during the public consultation period, no letters or objections were received on the proposed amendments. And whereas on the 27th of March 2024, CPA 1024, item 31 of Central Planning Authority again considered the proposal, and in light receiving no objections, it was resolved to forward the rezone application to the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing, Infrastructure, Transport and Development for onward transmission on to the House of Parliament, subject to Cabinet's approval. And whereas on the 14th of August 2024, Cabinet considered rezoning the proposal and approved that the matter be submitted to Parliament for consideration. Be it now therefore resolved that in accordance with Section 10.2b of the Development Planning Act 21 revision, Central Planning Authority hereby recommends that the submits of the Parliament the following proposal to the alteration to the Development Plan 1997, a summary of the maps of which are attached hereto, and be it further resolved to alter the zoning area of the registration section Lower Valley, Block 32D, parcel 320 to 322, 339 to 341, and 355, and Block 38E, parcel 637 and 638, from agriculture residential to medium density residential.
The motion has been duly moved. Does the honourable member, or minister, sorry, wish to speak thereto?
Yes, sir. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, I stand before the Honourable House today to present the government motion that seeks to rezone Block 32D, parcel 320 to 322, 339 to 341, and 355, and Block 38E, parcel 637 to 638 from agriculture residential to medium density residential. Honorable members, the rezoning initiatives offers us a timely opportunity to provide much needed housing infrastructure for our mid-income Caymanians. It is a proactive step towards alleviating the housing crisis that the Cayman Islands and the Caymanians are facing in forming a healthy family and for our communities. Mr. Speaker, while the land was zoned for agriculture purpose, it was really not very suitable for the purpose. With the proposed rezoning, we will harness these underdevelopment lands, shaping them into welcoming, vibrant neighborhoods without losing sight of our environmental responsibility, traditions, and our innovations. Following the public notification and consultation period, no objections were raised. Therefore, the CPA found it favorable to rezone through collaborations of the local stakeholders and institutions that we are confident that this development benefits our Caymanians. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the proposal is not a mere changing in zoning. It is a commitment to creating more housing opportunities that it prepares us for the future to strengthen the economic backbone of the country. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, I respectfully submit this proposal to rezone Block 32D, parcel 322 to 322, 320 to 322, 339 to 341, and 355, and Block 38E, parcel 637 to 638, for the consideration and the confidence that with your support, we can all deliver on the progress and prosperity for the people we serve.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Does any other member wish to speak? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wonder just a couple of questions on the proposal before. Otherwise, we have no objections to it. I see where in the summary of the proposal, it says that the subject parcels are undeveloped, consisting of pasture land and woodland. The applicant seeks to offer the lots to buyers to develop and construct homes targeted at mid-income levels. I don't know if the Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker, is in a position to say if these lots are intended, if it would only be raw land being sold, and if they are intended for to fit within the value of the first-time Caymanian due to concession, and if there are plans by the developer to actually put in homes that they also fit within the values of the first-time Caymanian purchases for the due to exemption. With those couple of questions, the opposition have no objections to the proposal, to the motion, sorry.
Thank you, Honourable Leader. Does any other member wish to speak? The Honourable Member for Borden Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I actually rise to support this motion that the government has brought here today. I know the developer that's actually doing this particular project. He has discussed it with me, and I can say that from speaking to others within the community, I think I only got 3 people who had concerns, and after speaking to them, those concerns were pretty much mitigated from that standpoint, and that was mostly along the lines of traffic. What I can say is in this particular area, the land itself was never suited for agriculture. It's located right just off Beach Bay Road. And what I can say is that the developer family has a reputation and a history of actually providing housing lots for many people within the Borden Town West community. From northward being one of the biggest development by Mike Watler and his family from back then. And I can say for the record, it is Mr. Charlie Watler that's actually doing it. And I can say that he is definitely looking to help a lot of young Caymanians in terms of purchasing this kind of land and so forth. And I can also see from my discussions with him that he's actually looking to put also restrictive covenants on it, so it's not just anything that can be built down there. So with that, I'm a little bit more comfortable. I'm not sure if he's going into the housing business. I didn't get that impression. But in terms of the lot sizes, I know he wanted the lots to a point where young Caymanians could actually afford a lot. So I don't want to preempt the question that was raised by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, but I got the impression from speaking to Mr. Charlie that he did endeavor to try to get as much young Caymanians as possible. And with that said, I definitely support this. And I, unlike other projects that may come aside, and I just want to make this known that while I am supportive of this project, I look at each project on a case-by-case basis. And this is one of them that I think would definitely benefit the Bordentown West community, and I thank the Minister for bringing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Does any other member wish to speak? The member from West Bay North, right?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I too am very happy to see this, even though it's not in my district. The fact that it's going to be helping young Caymanians is a very, it's the right thing to do. And I just want to stand and say that I hope and pray that before we leave this house, that I can see the rezoning of the head of Barkas as well for West Bay and for the whole island. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, then I'll invite the Honorable Minister to exercise his right of reply.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I want to thank the member for Bordentown West, because I know it's in his constituency. And I know this has been coming for quite some time. Mr. Charlie has actually, I know that he's mentioned his name, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Charlie was not aware, if anybody knows, that he is a developer, as it seems that when he does something, he does it right. He is a Caymanian of the soil, and I must say that it is, as we spoke about, it was a traditionally zoned for agriculture area. It was not really suitable, that parcel of land wasn't really suitable for agriculture, because that's one thing that we've been trying to make sure that we look at, is that if those parcels are very suitable for agriculture, we try to make sure we try to keep them into the agriculture zoning area, especially as the Minister for Agriculture. But this was one of those parcels that was a lot more hard rock, a lot more cliff. I don't know how much soil was actually in it, but I had the opportunity to actually to drive out there just recently, and I think in one of the first phases that was done there, to see the type of the lay of the land it is. And I haven't had that conversation with Mr. Charlotte to see whether he would be interested in building homes. I don't see him as that type of developer. I think he was more into land, to developing the land. But I thank the House for their support. I think I've answered the new Leader of Opposition's question about the housing situation part of it. And I would definitely think that first-time homeowners would actually get the benefit of this, actually, also of buying the property. I mean, I could not see any given reason why they wouldn't, unless there's a different type of zoning in different areas, but I won't get into that. But or the value of it, okay. I do think the lot sizes are valued, not putting it out there, because it was a range, but hopefully that, this is what Mr. Charlie wanted to do, is actually try to see how he could bring the costs down for landowners, because I sat and I listened to him one day for probably maybe an hour and a half, and one thing he spoke about is that when he looked around, he was very wondering how younger generations were going to be able to own property, especially in that Savannah area and Bordentown area, because he said the prices of everything was going to be just continuing to go up. And this was a part of that. He thought that, by him getting this actually done and rezoning this, he was actually be able to push that cost and that savings on to help the younger future generation that wanted to buy a property to continue moving forward. So I just thank the whole House for their support, and that'll be it, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister. Members, this is a difficult motion to get the voting on done procedurally correct, because the part of the resolution is attached to the motion as a summary of a rezoning proposal. So I trust all members have read the summary of the rezoning proposal. And when the resolution is recorded, I wish those that do the Hansard work to include the summary of the rezoning proposal as part of the resolution. Otherwise, anyone coming back and looking at it would not be able to make sense of it. This is an unhappy way of doing a motion, but given the fact that we were so far down the road, I let it go by. But it's not because I want to be difficult, but because when this Parliament votes on something, that goes into the Hansards, and it'll be there for as long as this institution exists. And long after all of us are gone, no one will be able, if it became an issue, no one will be able to track it. So, with those few words and guidance, I'll put the motion. Be it now therefore resolved that in accordance with Section 10(2)(b) of the Development and Planning Act 2021 revision, the Central Planning Authority hereby recommends and submits to the Parliament the following proposal for alteration to the Development Plan 1997, a summary and maps of which are attached hereto. And be it further resolved to alter the zoning area of registration section Lower Valley, Block 32D, parcels 320 to 322, 339 to 341, and 355, and Block 38E, parcels 637 and 638, from agriculture residential to medium density residential. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, Government Motion Number 4 of 2024-2025, Amendment to the Development Plan 1997, Proposed Rezoning, Lower Valley, Block 32D, parcels 320 to 322, 339 to 341, and 355, and Block 38E, parcels 637 and 638, has been duly passed. Madam Premier, I'll entertain the motion for adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the adjournment of this Honorable House until Wednesday, 10 a.m., the 9th of October.
Thank you, Madam Premier. The question is that the House do now adjourn until 10 a.m. on Wednesday, 9th of October. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. I believe the ayes have it. The House is accordingly adjourned until 10 a.m. on Wednesday, 9th of October.